Formula One never gives us a quiet week, and right now two big names are pulling the spotlight in opposite directions. Lewis Hamilton, pushing back hard against the quick-trigger criticism aimed at rookies, and Damon Hill, openly admitting he's rooting for Lando Norris for patriotic reasons. And both reactions tell us something important about how older voices relate to the new generation. Let me set it up. Hamilton begins by remembering what it was like to arrive in the sport, saying he came through as a rookie and understands how intense it can be. Yet he quickly pivots to a broader point, that the environment around modern F1 has escalated, that young drivers are bombarded by social media and a media narrative that can swing from hopeless to prodigy overnight, and that too many former drivers and commentators hand out judgments that are reactionary and inconsistent. That's the part that landed. Not just the defense of the rookies, but the critique of a culture that treats and one mistake as a career sentence and then celebrates the same person when the storyline flips. On the other side, you've got Damon Hill, who doesn't hide the fact he wants a British champion and says plainly, from a patriotic point of view, of course we're rooting for Lando. That's honest, it's human. But it's also a different kind of statement coming from a world champion and analyst. In this first chapter, I want you to feel the contrast. Hamilton's principled plea for patience and empathy versus Hill's candid, emotional rooting that feels more nationalistic than analytical. Both are human reactions, but they push different audiences. Hamilton nudges us toward holding opinion until there's a track record to judge, while Hill reminds us how identity and pride still shape sports commentary. Before we go deeper, I want to know where you sit on this. Do you think veteran commentators sometimes judge rookies too quickly? Or do you think their early takes are useful course corrections? Type yes if you think they judge too fast, no if you value their early perspective. And if you like this kind of straight-talking analysis, subscribe and hit the bell. It helps us grow toward our goal of 2,000 subscribers so we can keep digging into moments like this each race weekend. Now, if that sounds interesting, I'll unpack Hamilton's comments next and show why his critique is more than just a sympathetic line. It's a call for a different way of evaluating new talent. Hamilton's comments go much deeper than a polite nod to the rookies, and when you listen to the full context, you realize he is actually calling out the entire system of how young drivers are judged today. He starts by looking back to 2007, remembering what it felt like to arrive with all the excitement and pressure, and then he turns that memory into a warning about how the environment around Formula One has changed. He points out that the driving itself may stay relatively consistent, but the world surrounding a rookie has become far heavier. Social media questions everything in real time. Every mistake is clipped and replayed endlessly, and the pressure comes not only from inside the paddock, but from millions of fans who react instantly. What stood out most is how Hamilton threaded this idea of empathy through his answers, saying young drivers come in with preconceived ideas about what Formula One will be, only to discover how different the reality is once the cameras, the commentary, and the noise start closing in. He praises them for holding up under that weight, but he also makes it clear that the criticism they face is harsher and more inconsistent than ever, especially from older voices who should know better. That's where he delivers the line that really sparks the debate. When he talks about older drivers that more often than not didn't achieve much, making sweeping negative comments. That wasn't accidental, and I think you can feel the frustration behind it. Not just for himself, but for the rookies who get judged based on one weekend instead of an entire season of growth. He connects this to specific examples, like the way Franco Colapinto has handled the uncertainty surrounding his place in the sport. Hamilton talks about flying with him, getting to know him personally, and seeing how grounded and decent he is despite the pressure. And that's why his defense feels genuine. He's not talking from a distance. He's actually taking time to understand who these rookies are as people. That's something we don't often see from former drivers turned commentators, who sometimes go straight to criticism without ever taking a moment to understand the situation behind the scenes. This whole message from Hamilton is really a push for patience and consistency. And I want to hear what you think. Do you agree with Hamilton calling out former drivers for shifting their opinions so quickly? Or do you think he's being too protective of the younger generation? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. Your subscription genuinely helps us push toward our goal of 2,000 subscribers, so we can keep bringing you deeper, more thoughtful F1 coverage. Isaac Hadjar's story is one of the clearest examples of why Hamilton's criticism of snap judgments hits so hard. When Hadjar made his debut in Australia, the entire tone around him shifted in seconds because of one emotional, high-pressure moment. He crashed on the formation lap, and that moment got replayed everywhere, not just on broadcasts, but across social platforms where every mistake gets magnified. The image of Anthony Hamilton consoling him was powerful, and a lot of fans understood how overwhelming that situation must have been. But not everyone responded with empathy. Helmut Marko called Hadjar embarrassing, and several commentators piled on, dismissing him before he'd even taken a proper step into the sport. And this is exactly the reaction Hamilton was talking about. The way a single moment can become a defining label because older voices rush to make statements instead of letting the kid breathe. What makes this even more striking is how quickly the narrative flipped. 21 rounds later, Hadjar didn't just recover, he delivered performances that completely rewrote his season. His podium at Zandvoort wasn't luck, and it wasn't chaos handing him a result. It was composure, racecraft, and resilience in one of the most demanding circuits on the calendar. Suddenly, the same commentators who dismissed him early in the year were praising him, acting like they had always believed in his potential. This is exactly the inconsistency Hamilton is pushing back against. The tendency to judge instantly and then pretend those judgments never happened once the driver proves them wrong. And Colapinto fits into this conversation too. Hamilton brought him up because he sees the pressure he's under, the uncertainty, and the personal qualities that don't get talked about on television. You can see how Hamilton is trying to shift the conversation from quick criticism to a more human understanding of what it means to be young in this sport today. He wants fans and analysts to look at the full picture, not just the headlines. So let me ask you directly, which rookie has changed your opinion the most this season? Was it Hadjar proving people wrong, or someone else who quietly built momentum when nobody was paying attention? Tell me in the comments. I want to see who you're backing. And if you're someone who's tired of reactionary takes and wants deeper, more balanced analysis in your F1 content, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Every new subscriber helps us move closer to our goal of 2,000 and lets us keep producing the kind of coverage mainstream pundits don't always deliver. Damon Hill's admission that he's rooting for Lando Norris purely for patriotic reasons is one of those moments that lands differently depending on how you look at it. On one hand, it's completely understandable for fans to feel a sense of pride when someone from their country fights for a title. National pride has always been part of sports, and F1 is no exception. But when it comes from a former world champion and a long-time analyst, the conversation takes on a different tone. You expect someone with Hill's experience to frame his preferences around performance, momentum, and racecraft, or even the mental side of fighting for a championship. Instead, he just said he wants Norris to win because he's British. And that simplicity is what makes the comment feel surprising. It isn't offensive, it isn't malicious, but it does feel like a step down from the detailed, analytical perspective Hill is normally capable of bringing to the table. What makes this moment even more interesting is that Norris actually has a strong performance-based argument for the title this season. He's been more consistent than Piastri. He's scored more heavily since Zandvoort. And he's shown the kind of adaptability you expect from a driver ready to fight at the front. Hill could have made all those points and nobody would have questioned them. But by leaning entirely on patriotism, he unintentionally opened the door to criticism. The idea that he's letting national pride overshadow objective analysis. And once you hear that statement, it becomes difficult not to reevaluate everything else he says later. Because even when he gives fair assessments, like pointing out that Piastri looks a little under pressure, or that Norris has found something in his driving recently, you can't help but wonder if that early patriotic bias is influencing the tone. He even talks about how Mark Webber could help Piastri reset, offering good, thoughtful insight. And when he shifts to Verstappen, he suddenly becomes the strong analyst again, saying nobody should count Max out because of his history of bouncing back. That's the thing. Hill clearly has the ability to be deep, nuanced, and fair. So when he defaults to a reason as simple as nationality, it stands out. It shows how even respected voices can fall into easy explanations instead of digging into the real complexity of a title fight. And I want to hear what you think. Is it acceptable for former champions to be openly nationalistic in their commentary? Or should they try to stay more neutral given their influence on fans? Leave your vote in the comments. Just type yes if you think it's fine, or no if you think it undermines their credibility. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure you subscribe and enable notifications. Every subscriber helps us move closer to our goal of 2,000 and supports the channel so I can keep bringing you these deep, honest looks into the stories shaping the season. What these two stories really show is the split in how Formula One's older voices approach the new generation, and that split shapes the way fans interpret the title fight more than people realise. On one side, Hamilton is trying to evolve the conversation. He's pushing for patience, for empathy, for a more thoughtful understanding of what rookies are actually dealing with. He knows firsthand how the pressure can crush someone before they've even had the chance to grow. And with social media amplifying every mistake, that pressure hits harder than it ever did in his early years. When Hamilton talks about supporting the youth even after he leaves the sport, you can feel that he wants the next generation to enter an environment built on fairness instead of fast criticism, on context instead of knee-jerk reactions. His comments challenge us to ask whether the sport is truly allowing young drivers the room they need to develop. On the other side, Hill is leaning into something more traditional. His patriotic preference isn't harmful, but it reflects a mindset grounded in old-school fandom rather than objective analysis. And in the modern era, where fans expect more fairness, more clarity, and more depth from commentators, even harmless bias becomes noticeable. It colours the ways other comments are interpreted, even when those comments are measured, balanced, or well-informed. This contrast between Hamilton and Hill highlights the tension between two eras of Formula One. One trying to push forward and redefine how we talk about young talent, and another that still ties part of its identity to familiar or roots like national pride. As we head deeper into the season, these perspectives matter because they influence the bigger narrative around the championship. They shape how fans view pressure, performance, and legitimacy. Whether it's the battle between Norris and Piastri, or the lingering threat of Verstappen waiting for his moment to strike, commentary frames the story fans walk away with. And with so many new viewers joining the sport every year, the voices guiding that story have more influence than ever. So let me ask you, do you think F1 commentary will evolve toward Hamilton's style of patience and context? Or do you think the sport will always fall back on familiar angles like nationality and quick judgments? Tell me in the comments. I'm really curious to see where you stand. And if you've enjoyed this full breakdown, make sure you like the video and subscribe as we push toward our goal of 2,000 subscribers. Your support genuinely helps the channel grow and keeps these in-depth conversations coming every week.